to it. I don't think we will contact any of the other members. That would, I'm sure, produce an interesting reaction, but I think we'll stick to the members that we've got. Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of Cabinet, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that the mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, you should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hand once you finish speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I'll also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. Officers too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. We'll now proceed to agenda business. This item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence from members, and I have had no apologies for absence. And therefore, we will now receive any declarations of interest of a personal or prejudicial nature from members and officers in accordance with the provision of the Members' Code of Conduct adopted by the authority from the 1st of September 2008. Do I have any declarations of interest? Does the Corporate Director for Social Services and Wellbeing want to give a declaration, or will you do that later on in the agenda, Claire?
Thank you, Leader. Claire Marchant, Corporate Director of Social Services and Wellbeing. I was going to give that declaration at that point.
At that point, yes.
To private session.
Yes, I've just noticed that this is obviously at the start of the agenda, so and this is on item 17. So we'll take that declaration in the closed part of the meeting when the public has been excluded. Thank you, Claire. The first item, the first report on today's agenda is a report of the Interim Chief Officer of Finance, Performance and Change, and it's on the outcome of the consultation Shaping Progen's Future. So over to you, please, Jill.
Leader, sorry, before you come in, Jill, you need to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I do indeed, Andrew. I was getting too excited. Apologies, and I'll thank you for noticing that. We do have for approval of the minutes of the last meeting of Cabinet, which was held on the 16th of November.
Move.
Thank you, Deputy
Second.
Leader. Thank you, Councillor Patel. Is everyone in agreement with those minutes, please?
Aye.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. So we will now move on to that first report, and I will ask Jill to introduce the report, and a very warm welcome to Nicola Feddersen, our marketing officer. Warm welcome to Nicola to the meeting too. Jill, please.
Okay, thank you, Leader. If I take you through the report, as you can see, Nicola is here also, who oversaw the report, but obviously Nicola Bunston wrote the report, so we both do our best to answer questions. For the purpose of the recording, I'm presenting on behalf of the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change, as I'm no longer the interim Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change, because you've got a real one now. So, so I'm presenting on Caris's behalf on this occasion. So the purpose of the report today is to inform Cabinet of the outcome of the Shaping Bridgend's Future 2021, the budget consultation, where we ask citizens to help determine a longer term vision for the county borough. The intention obviously is to understand what the public felt had worked well, and where we need to continue to make changes or improvements as we recover from the pandemic, to obviously ensure that we deliver effective and efficient services for our communities in the medium to long term. And it's very similar to last year's budget consultation, Leader, where we asked some similar questions about what was working well, what wasn't working for the public. So quite different from some of our previous budget consultations. So the idea is obviously to obtain views on the council's spending priorities following years of reductions in funding and continued financial pressures, along with addressing post-COVID-19 recovery. And all councils, I think it's fair to say, are trying to change the way they work and deliver services differently, and Bridgend is obviously no different. So the public consultation was over a period of 8 weeks, from the 20th of September to the 14th of November, and views were invited over all the criteria set out for you in 3.2 of the report today. We wanted to try and garner as many views as possible on and used a wide variety of methods, and I'm sure Nicola can talk about those in more detail. We use surveys, social media, online engagements, online FAQs, videos, radio adverts and media releases. And the restrictions around COVID obviously, as you can imagine, limited the face-to-face discussions in the community. We also produced an easy read, large print and a special edition for young people. We wrote to all the governing bodies, head teachers and Bridgend College to promote the consultation. And it was also supported by a full comms and promotional plan, including a podcast by yourself, Leader, to promote the consultation. At 4.2 and 4.3, you'll see an analysis of the responses. And I think it's fair to say that it is quite disappointing, the number of responses that we received. Maybe unsurprising in the circumstances, but it's considerably down, 39% on last year. And last year was a significant decrease on the previous year. So I think we'll have to have a little think about how we attract more people to take part in this for the future. That's not to say that the views weren't extremely welcome and obviously very, very valuable for us going forward, but still it's a considerably smaller number than we had hoped to attract. So the responses were quite mixed and in some cases almost in conflict or contradictory, but there were some clear messages that I think we can take forward from this. Respondents didn't feel that the council had been as effective as they could be in meeting values and strategic aims in the last 12 months. And that's really interesting because at this exact point last year, when we asked similar questions, we were in the middle of a very heavy lockdown, and the respondents were very, very complimentary about the council services. So there's something to unpick there about the difference on the same questions a year on and how people perhaps view services differently. So it's something for us to look at. Respondents felt that local businesses, town centres and the visitor economy and culture and leisure were really important. And they also felt that the council had delivered on the wellbeing services and felt that if they were to pinpoint 3 services for people's wellbeing in the future, it was about older people, food poverty and homelessness. And there were some interesting answers on the face-to-face customer services. The majority of residents have been happy to contact the council through phone, email and the website. And indeed, if you use blue badges as an example, an increase in the number that have been applied for very successfully, an issue with no complaints regarding the use of digital channels. But we don't want to lose all the positives from people contacting the council remotely, but also recognise that from time to time, residents may need a face-to-face meeting, and that's seen as a priority for recovery. But interestingly, from the respondents, they would like that in the community rather than at the civic centre. And so we've already started working on that to see how that can be done better. Overall, residents were going to continue to access services online and gave some suggestions as to how we can help with that. So that'll be really useful. And many respondents had signed up to our Gov delivery communication. Again, Nicola can talk about that in detail. And 59% thought it was either good or excellent. So that's a great step forward in communication with our residents. There's well over 30,000 signed up to that, and we probably need to make more use of that method of communication. Respondents thought that the council should prioritise spending on regeneration, roads and schools, and interestingly thought that we should charge for some services and resume charging for services that have been free during the pandemic, and they raised car parking particularly as the most quoted response. At least half of the respondents felt that council tax should be kept at the same level, although again, interestingly, 29% said that they'd be prepared to pay higher, around 3.5%. And in terms of the long-term priorities, they really chime with our wellbeing objectives, stating that efficiencies and making residents more self-sufficient were key priorities. So finally, the 3 services that have been important to our residents during the pandemic were waste and recycling, highways and infrastructure, and sport and recreation. So plenty of food for thought there from the survey leader. The full report is set out at Appendix A, and I take you to the recommendations at 9.1. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jill. It's certainly a comprehensive report on this. There is a lot of food for thought there, and as you've articulated very well, sometimes the messages are very contradictory, aren't they, about what we should and shouldn't do. Deputy Leader, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And first of all, can I move the officer recommendation to note the report? It is a little disappointing at the low response rates, but I would like to thank everyone who took the time to respond. I thank those that give us positive comments and those that were less than positive. And I'm sure we will take this report away and digest it and learn lessons going forward, so we can improve services that we deliver. So just thank everyone that took the time to respond to the report.
Yes, thanks, Deputy Leader. We know how much work goes into this every year, and we also know that every year we try different ways of engaging with that community, and I'm sure next year will be no different. And also we're all hoping next year, but I think we've also learned that hoping that we'll be back to a level of normality is almost cursing next year. But I think we haven't been able to do nearly as much face-to-face engagement as we normally would do. Though I also note that once again, for many groups, actually, there is a preference for some of that online face-to-face engagement, and no doubt we'll continue that in the future as well. Councillor Baldwin, I can see that you want to come in. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, and I'm happy to second that report as well. But and to say to officers that not to beat themselves up in relation to the respondents, because we recognise that we've been through some difficult times, and I'm sure people that would quite happily normally sit there and tell us what they think about the services that they're delivering have had other things on their mind to worry about, like making sure they've done their lateral flow tests, or they continuing to have to collect their children from school, or worrying about putting food on the table when they're working. So they probably have other things to worry about, and I'm sure they will be back in full strength at the next opportunity to tell us exactly what we need to be doing in relation to council tax levels and what we should be and shouldn't be cutting from our services. So I'd like to just thank you all again. It is still valuable, it is still evidence-based, and we just need to move on from here. But thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin, and we will, I'm sure, reflect on this in our medium-term financial strategy, or try to, because of course what we can't do is reflect some of the aspirations, I'll use that term, that have been evidenced by the consultation. We'd all like to cut council tax and invest in services, but that's not a circle we're able to square. So it's probably not going to be possible for us to fully reflect the views expressed in the consultation, but we'll do our best, and we will of course be making decisions around the medium-term financial strategy in the coming months. So thank you both once again, and please pass on our appreciation to the team, because we know it was a team effort, and will continue to be in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Okay, so the next report that we have is a report of the Corporate Director for Communities, and it's a report on our strategic transport schemes. Janine, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. And yes, good afternoon. I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. So this is item 5, and the purpose of this report today is to provide Cabinet with an overview of the Council's current and potential future strategic transport projects. and to seek priorities for schemes to go forward for any future phase of the South East Wales Metro programme, and to look at other funding mechanisms as well, such as the UK Government's Levelling Up Fund. And the projects we've identified in this report will also form the basis of our Bridgend Council strategic transport priorities. And we are concluding these in discussions with Welsh Government, Transport for Wales and Network Rail themselves. So I just set out a little bit of background to this report in section 3. Now, we know that strategic transport projects are vital to facilitating the improvement of public transport and to improve our active travel infrastructure. And it'll encourage a modal shift to more sustainable forms of transport and therefore reduce our carbon footprint in addition to vehicular congestion in our borough. And schemes that we've identified, such as the Penprisk Bridge proposal in Pencode, will definitely improve public transport efficiency, as well as providing scope for future rail service frequency enhancements throughout the whole borough, and particularly along the Maesteg to Cardiff route, and that's identified as a key transport corridor for us, so something we really want to encourage. These schemes also provide opportunity for future localised regeneration schemes around the project areas, and they have associated social and economic benefits. Now, the Cardiff Capital Region, CCR, through its Metro project and with Welsh Government funding, are the principal mechanism for securing funding for our strategic transport projects. And currently, Bridgend has £3 million allocated for Metro funding for the Bethcall Metro Link bus facility, which is currently a subject of a planning application, and also for the feasibility study for the Penprisk active travel bridge and removal of the level crossing in Pencode. And we are undertaking a public consultation on that facility as well. So I'm sure you're very aware of that. And again, active travel, a very important part of this whole strategic transport piece. And Bridgend has benefited from, again, £3 million of funding from Welsh Government to implement routes across the borough currently. So this active travel programme is managed separately to the work that we're talking about on the transport schemes, and it is subject to the next Cabinet report, which is item 6 on the agenda. So I won't dwell on that too much today, Leader. But it's essential that we have a list of priorities for strategic transport so that we can go forward and put these into any national plan that we have, that we can then bid for funding for these schemes, and then we can promote these schemes when we're seeking contributions through Section 106 agreements. So Section 4 of the report, Leader, sets out the current situation that we have and a whole set of schemes that we're proposing, 11 schemes to go forward as our strategic transport priorities. Excuse me. What is important to note at this point is that we've prioritised these schemes based on a number of things. On how they deliver local and regional economic, environmental and safety objectives, how they are allocated in the local transport plan and in our local development plan, our LDP, and also that they comply with national policy aims and objectives. So the list that we've got from paragraph 4.4 onwards is put in alphabetically, Leader. These are not in priority order, but these set out the schemes that we would like to advocate that Cabinet accept as the strategic priority transport schemes for Bridgend. And what you will see, Leader, there is a mixture of schemes that will be delivered on a range of different timescales and a range of different values. Some of the schemes are already underway or well underway. For instance, if we draw your attention to the Bethcall Metro Link, that is a scheme that is being funded, it's paragraph 4.11, that has been funded by the Cardiff City region currently, and it's out to planning consultation. And of course, we have also talked about the Penprisk Bridge, road bridge. That's a major scheme itself, set out in 4.10 of the Cabinet report. And that is a scheme that we're progressing through design, funded by the Metro programme, and that we're hoping to apply for levelling up funding from the UK government next year to implement that scheme. So there's a range of schemes set out in this report, Leader, from section 4.3 to 4.13. I know that you've had an opportunity to see them now. So what I would do then, Leader, is please take you to the recommendation in section 9, which states that please would Cabinet approve the strategic transport projects that are identified in order that we can go forward with future CCR Metro funding or any other funding mechanisms we see fit, and that we can progress these schemes accordingly. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks very much for that report, Janine. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Janine. Yeah, a really exciting report, I think, that sets out the strategic transport vision for Bridgend, and it just goes to show the importance of the work that Bridgend is actually conducting, not just with our neighbours, but with the Cardiff Capital Region City deal and with Welsh Government and Westminster. We all totally agree with it. If we've got somebody's money to spend, then we will spend it. And ultimately, we don't care where that money comes from if it brings improvements to Bridgend. And it's good to see that Cardiff Capital Region is bringing some improvements to Porthcawl with the Metro link and with the feasibility money that is coming for the Penbrisk Bridge. So I think it's a very exciting report, Leader, and I'm more than happy to move that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. Next, I've got Councillor Smith, please.
Yes, thanks, Leader, and I'd like to thank Janine for that report and second Stuart's proposal that we adopt the recommendations. I won't bore you by going into railways. One of my favourite topics. I'll go on forever, but I think every single scheme in this report is to be applauded. The Pyle railway station relocation, active travel, the Ford spur, proposals for the Garrow and the Ogmore, the Maesteg line and the Brackla halt. They're all incredibly useful. As Janine says, they will all have different time scales, but I'm planning to live long enough to see them all into fruition. And perhaps I think this is a very imaginative report, actually. And I think once we become imaginative, then unimaginable things get added on. So I'm very, very optimistic about this. Just make one general point. I think my guess is that if we'd had a similar report to this 10 years ago, it would have been a very, very different one. It would have been focused on the motor car and how on earth we can cope with private travel, etc. But the strong bias now is towards public transport and sustainable transport. So there's been a huge shift in opinion and a huge shift in culture. And what we've got to do now is to translate that into actual projects which take place on the ground.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. And you're right, is the focus on delivery. And I'm so pleased that a number of these projects are actually so close to delivery already, not least the Porthcawl Metro link, where a planning application has now been submitted or is about to be submitted, and we'll look to be on site next year for example. And for another example, we're undertaking a major consultation around the plans for Pencoed. Councillor Patel, you raised your hand. Did you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Janine. It's a really pleasing report, and I'm really glad that there's something to offer for all parts of the borough. Often, we don't get told that we offer something for everyone, and I think this report does offer something for everyone and all parts of the county. So I think that for me is a really positive improvement, and bringing it all together in one report is really nice to see. And you know, I agree with what Councillor Smith has said before.
Councillor Patel, apologies, but I don't know if it's just me, Janine, but I'm really struggling to hear what you're saying, Councillor Patel. Perhaps you could try turning your camera off, and that might improve the quality, because we can't understand what you're saying now, unfortunately.
Started to fade when she said she agreed with what I said. So
Very intelligent technology, isn't it?
we need to get broadband up to the Ogmore.
Yes, that's probably sensible. I think she may be leaving the meeting, and I'm sure will return. And I wanted to add as well, whilst we wait for Councillor Patel to return, how pleased I am that the projects also dovetail and support other important agendas for the authority and for our partners. So the development of potential brownfield sites, or brownfield sites like Ueni Road, the importance of a town centre first policy. So the plans for Porthcawl Metrolink and for Bridgend railway station. And again, I think we can say that each and every one of the transport projects has a focus on modal shift, whether that be from private motor car to bus or train, or indeed to active travel. That there's a golden thread throughout all of these projects, and none of them actually are transport projects alone. They are regeneration projects. They are projects that support that with much wider agenda we have about creating new communities as well. So I'm very pleased to support this report, and I know from previous discussion, because it doesn't look like Councillor Patel has been able to rejoin, she's asked about timescales, and I expect that it's going to be that they'll depend on individual projects, but I'll ask Janine to come in on that point, as I'm sure Councillor Patel would want me to make it on her behalf. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Oh, I believe Councillor Patel may have rejoined our call, Leader.
Oh, excellent. Councillor Patel, can you hear me? And can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear, Councillor Patel. So would you like to repeat some of those points, as we missed most of them, well, all of them, after you said that you'd agreed with Councillor Smith. So over to you, please, Councillor Patel.
Oh, that was most of it. No, I agree with Councillor Smith in terms of the fact this report isn't focused on cars and kind of private transportation. I guess the main part of what I was asking is for you to give a time scale for the projects overall. So it doesn't say in the report what the timescale is for the report. So I know that the leader mentioned and Councillor Baldwin mentioned that some of the projects are already starting to come through fruition and some already being designed. But I just wondered, some of the projects are new to us, and so just wondered in terms of priorities, what we're going to be looking at and what the duration of this report would be. So is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it long-term 20-year thinking? That sort of thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Yes, excellent question, actually. Well, what I suppose the easiest way to answer this question is that there'll be a variety of timescales for the schemes that we've put forward. What we have been is deliberately ambitious here, and I think the team have done a fantastic job at looking at a whole range of schemes right across the borough that will make the maximum impact for us economically, sustainably, linking up communities. That's the key thing. Now, what we do know is there's a number of schemes that have got funding already and are being worked on currently, and we've talked quite a bit about the Metro link in Porthcawl. We've talked about the Pembrist Bridge. We know we're doing some work on the Iweni Road interchange in Maesteg, because we've gained the Cardiff Capital Region money, £3.5 million, in order to move that scheme forward. So that scheme's moving. We're also doing quite a bit of work on the active travel programme. We've spent over 3 million over the last year on those schemes, and actually the next report on the agenda is just about active travel. And the Bridgend railway station itself is part of the Bridgend master plan, and we're getting together with Transport for Wales, Network Rail and some of the landowners in that area to try and move that scheme on, key for driving improvements in Bridgend town centre, because it's the third busiest railway station in Wales, actually. So that's really good to know. Now, some of the other schemes, so those are the schemes that are current and moving. Some of the other schemes, I would say, are within the next 5 years. That we would look to implement some improvements, in particular to improve some of the things like the Junction 36 area, because we know it can be very constrained around that exit of the M4. And we also want to look at how quickly we can improve things like bus infrastructure, rapid buses up into the valleys, such as Ogmore and the Garw Valley. Can we improve the train links up to the Maesteg in the Llynfi Valley? We'd like to think we can get some movement on those schemes next. And then a more longer term view, dare I say, still ambitious, but a longer term view is the Ford branch line. If we look at redevelopment of that Ford factory site, we'd like to look at bringing that line back into use. And the other thing, of course, is the relocation of Pyle railway station. It's an ambition that we've got as part of our LDP for a new strategic housing site. We'd like to relocate that railway station. So an awful lot of schemes that are currently live are being developed, schemes that we'd like to apply for funding next. About improving the connectivity with the valleys, and then some of those very large strategic schemes that have gone in the LDP, the Ford line, the Pyle railway station. So an incredibly ambitious strategic plan, dare I say, from now to the next 10, 12 years. Councillor Patel, and all aligned, of course, with the ambitions of our LDP and the ambitions of Welsh Government to really focus on a modal shift and become sustainable.
Thank you for that, Janine. I'm sure that answers your question, Councillor Patel. And this report also underlines the critical importance of Cardiff Capital Region to the transport infrastructure projects we are progressing. And without our participation and without their support, we would not be making progress on such projects as the Iweni Road site in Maesteg and the Pencoed level crossing and the Porthcawl Metro link. So I am pleased that we made the decision to be part of that programme, the City Deal, and we continue to be very important partners in that City Deal, and also that we are working hard on developing close closer and stronger partnerships with UK government, Welsh Government, Transport for Wales, and any other partners that wants to work with us to deliver on these transport projects. Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with that recommendation, please?
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Thank you, everyone. So, Janine, I'm going to ask if you can wait a little while, because I'm going to reorder the agenda, as one of your colleagues has to attend an urgent a meeting. So I'm going to bring forward the report of the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support. So you can have a break, and I think you lead one anyway, because you've got about 4 or 5 reports to give. So I'll bring the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support, please, to speak to the report on proposal to establish a learning resource centre for pupils with moderate learning difficulties at Ysgol Cynraedd Sant. Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Leader. For the benefit of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support. So I'm grateful for you, Leader, for bringing this paper forward. I'm also grateful for Janine for allowing me to do so. So thank you both. So 2 short reports that are related, Leader, as you'll be aware, but they're 2 very important ones, and obviously we're very excited about some of the benefits that these will yield. So first of all, the first report is to seek Cabinet's approval to consult formally with stakeholders on the proposal to establish a learning resource centre for pupils with moderate learning difficulties at Ysgol Cynraedd Sant. Leader, you'll be aware that local authorities across the United Kingdom are experiencing a rise in demand for services for children and young people with additional learning needs, and the cost to support this is often exceeding the budget available. Local authorities are also reporting that these needs are becoming more numerous by volume and also more complex, and this is putting pressure on all local authorities to meet and resource these needs, and this will only be exacerbated by the additional pressures that have been caused by the pandemic. We have taken a proactive approach to this by commissioning additional learning needs strategic planning review, and one of the areas that has been identified as part of this review is provision to open additional provision for Key Stage 2 pupils in a Welsh medium primary, and these children will have moderate learning difficulties. The proposal, Leader, if approved, would mean that an LRC, a learning resource centre at Ysgol Cynraedd Sant for a maximum of 15 pupils with MLD would be established from the 1st of September 2022. There would be a graduated intake from the 1st of September 2022, and the admissions for the LRC would be decided upon through an admissions panel. The LRC would be an integrated part of the mainstream school, providing an appropriate environment in which the pupils can develop and thrive within their peer group and have normal access to mainstream curriculum. And the LRC would also provide specialist learning facilities within the school and provide expertise and advice to all staff. Now, from the pupils' point of view, Leader, they would have access to individual, small, group and whole class experiences as appropriate to their needs. Their progress would be closely monitored and individual development plans would be regularly reviewed. Other mainstream pupils of the school would also benefit from this proposal, as it seeks to widen the specialist learning facilities within the school and provide expertise and guidance to all staff. The funding for the LRC would be allocated through the mainstream school's delegated budget via the school's funding formula allocation and using a combination of the class allocation and elements of the age-weighted pupil unit. As part of the MTFS, a budget pressure of £60,000 was approved for the provision of an MLD class to cater for Key Stage 2 children accessing education through the medium of Welsh. And this budget would be used to fund the LRC, including the set-up costs at the school should the proposal go ahead. So therefore, Leader, I take you to the recommendations of paragraph 9, where Cabinet is recommended to agree to consult formally on the proposal to establish an LRC for pupils with MLD at Ysgol Cynraedd Sant, and also for the outcome then of the consultation to be reported back to Cabinet once the consultation is closed. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Councillor Smith, you wanted to come in, please.
Simply to propose that we accept the recommendation to go to consultation, and to thank the school leadership for being open to this suggestion, and hopefully it will go ahead, because it will fill a gap in our provision.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. It's a very important point that you make about the inclusive nature of the school and the ethos of further developing this type of provision. It is essentially an inclusive form of provision, because whilst it is very specialist in its nature, it is located within mainstream community schools, so it enables learners to benefit from being part of a mainstream community school, whilst also benefiting from that specialist provision. And I wanted to check, Lindsay, if there were any other MLD units, Welsh medium units for children with moderate learning difficulties in the county borough. But obviously this is very, very good news, because we have a small number of Welsh medium primary schools, so it does mean that we're not able to offer, haven't been able to offer in the past as much specialist provision as we'd like to. So we're hoping there'll be a very positive response to this proposal.
Yes, thanks, Leader. So this will be the first fully dedicated Welsh medium provision, but obviously what we do, we provide Welsh language provision to learners with MLD where required.
Okay, thank you very much, Lindsay. And also, I'm sure, given the level of engagement, that we have identified the space in Cynoedd Sant and any improvements that would need to be made to make that space suitable for this additional classroom.
Yes, Leader. So first of all, the physical works will be covered by the capital maintenance grant. So obviously we're grateful to Welsh Government for that additional funding stream. And in addition to that, then we've looked at areas within the schools to make sure that they complement the existing settings. So we've identified two areas, one within Cynoedd Sant, which was previously occupied by the Maithrin facility, and also in addition then within Tremaines, this will be an internal adaptation to the school.
Okay, thank you for that, Lindsay. So for a mover, do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Patel, and everyone in agreement with the recommendation at 9.
Aye.
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Lindsay. And then we've got the second report, which is on the provision for pupils with additional learning needs for pupils with autistic spectrum disorders at Tremaines Primary School.
Thank you, Leader. So an equally important report, and this is seeking Cabinet approval to consult formally with stakeholders on the proposal to establish an LLC for pupils with autistic spectrum disorders at Tremaines Primary School. So, Leader, as I covered the context for this paper and the subsequent review of ALN provision in the previous report, with your permission, I'll proceed directly to paragraph 3.4 of the report. So one of the areas that's been identified within the report is for additional provision at Key Stage 2 for children with ASD. And Leader, if this proposal is approved, it would mean that an LRC at Tremaines Primary School for a maximum of 8 pupils with ASD would be established from the 1st September 2022. There would be a graduated intake from the 1st September 2022, and the admissions from the LRC would be decided upon through an admissions panel. The LRC would be an integrated part of the mainstream school, providing an appropriate environment in which pupils can develop and thrive. And the LRC would provide specialist learning facilities within the school and provides expertise and advice to all staff. As previously noted, Leader, the funding for the LRC would be allocated through the mainstream school's delegated budget via the school's funding formula allocation and using a combination of the class allocation and the age-weighted pupil unit element. Funding levels will be derived from notional current staffing needs and are based on the salary of a teacher and 2 support staff. One-off funding for the setup cost would be approximately £10,000. As part of the MTFS, a budget pressure of £82,000 was approved for an additional primary school ASD LRC class to cater for Key Stage 2 children. And this budget will be used to fund the LRC, including the setup costs at Tremaines, should the proposal go ahead. So therefore, Leader, I take you directly to the recommendations at paragraph 9.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Exactly the same comments that I made previously. This is a very welcome filling of a gap in our provision in this part of Bridgend, and I commend this report. And we go to consultation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. Just one question from me, Lindsay. The reference in the consultation document to Pencoed Primary School and Llangewydd Juniors is, I assume, a reference to the specialist provision that's already in place at both those schools, and that's the nearest specialist provision for children with autistic spectrum disorder. And of course, there are no plans to change that at all. This is new provision in addition to that is being proposed. But I think it's worthwhile making that clear in the document, as it says there, affected schools, but they're affected only in the sense that this will provide additional capacity. And then if children are assessed as needing this specialist provision, and they live obviously within the community of Brackla, for example, then they would be offered a place in Tremaines as opposed to Llangewydd or Pencoed. But I know both schools are very inclusive schools, and both learning resource centres are full, and that is one of the reasons why we have this proposal here today. And also, Lindsay, can you confirm that obviously, as you've outlined in the report, the demand and the identification of need is rising right across the county borough, but the greatest increase and the biggest increase in need and demand is in this part of the county borough of Bridgend, hence the proposal. And also, I'm sure you can confirm that Tremaines Primary School is regarded as something of a centre of excellence in terms of its a specialist provision for children with additional learning needs. So I'm sure they would be very successful if the consultation is positive and the decision is made. I'm sure they'd be very successful in delivering the proposed new provision.
Thank you, Leader. So absolutely happy to confirm that. Tremaines an excellent school, and we're very lucky in Bridgend. All our schools are inclusive, and they all welcome any support to learners with additional learning needs. So it's something we're very proud of in Bridgend, and long may that tradition continue. With regard to the other 2 points you've made, with regard to the 2 other schools, Pencoed Primary and Llangewydd Juniors, being affected, obviously they're going to remain. They are 2 excellent facilities in those 2 schools. Again, facilities we're very proud of, but as you quite rightly note, both facilities now are full. So this is additional provision to those to meet the needs of those learners. And then the final point you raise is the locality and why we've prioritised these particular areas is part of the additional learning needs review. Identified the need for a central location, ideally in the Bryn cluster. So that's precisely, we've taken that information and built upon that. So thank you, Leader. We'll make sure that we consolidate that in the consultation.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. So the only final point is a point that we always make in such consultations is we very much welcome and we encourage parents, teachers, governors and learners in particular to take part in the consultation and particularly to take part, whether it's negative or indeed positive, because sometimes people, when they're supportive of proposals, don't think they need to take part in the consultation, but that's just as important as if you have views that are not positive about a proposal. Okay, is everyone in agreement with the recommendation, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much for that, Lindsay. And I'm sure you've got a meeting now to attend. So we will now go back to the Corporate Director for Communities, and we'll receive her second report today on the Active Travel Network Map. Janine, please.
Oh, thank you, Leader. Yes, so item 6 for us today is the Active Travel Network Map, as you've outlined. And the purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval to submit a revised Active Travel Network Map to Welsh Government by their prescribed deadline of the 31st of December 2021. So there's a duty placed on the Council through the Active Travel Wales Act 2013 to develop active travel routes which connect key destinations such as education and employment. And then having a comprehensive network of active travel infrastructure will give a genuine choice for those who choose to depend upon walking, cycling as part of their daily routine, Leader. But what I must say, though, is whilst we've published these plans and we are quite successful at implementing active travel, it is incredibly complex when you're going to put these routes into the borough. We have to be mindful of a whole ream of health and safety issues, land ownership issues, and ensuring we have the most direct and efficient link that provides connectivity to residents, but doesn't compromise the road network and or safety in any way. So we're very good at doing it. I think the team make it look easy. In fact, it's a very complex process. Now, an important part of this active travel network map was to consult the residents in the borough to have their thoughts. And we've actually consulted in 3 phases for this new plan that we're putting in front of you. The first consultation was back in December last year, 18th of December last year to the 22nd of January. That was stage 1 consultation. Very good participation, 911 people actively participated, and we had 694 comments. So we reflected on these comments and we came back then into stage 2. We publicised the stage 2 plans from the 3rd of March to the 26th of April. And again, very, very good participation by the public. We had 742 agreements with comments, 271 individual comments, and over 2,000 people visited that online consultation. Now, as a result of that, we produced a statutory consultation report, and that is something that everybody saw sight of before stage 3, which was the final consultation on the maps and the plans, Leader. And that consultation finished at the end of November. It was from the 1st of September for 12 weeks to the 24th of November. So what you do have appended in this document as Appendix 1 is that statutory consultation report. Very, very detailed, Leader. It shows all the different routes, all the different connectivity throughout the borough. Now, we've implemented already £3 million worth of routes. The Welsh Government are very committed to modal shift. They want us to move to more active measures if we can. And this year they've committed 70 million in this year for active travel. So we're applying for more funding to get more routes into place. Now, officers are still analysing all of those comments that ended on the 24th of November. And they're putting together a very detailed report, which we will submit to Welsh Government by the end of December, Leader. But because of the deadlines and the Cabinet reporting cycle, you have that report before the finalised detail is in it. But if I take you to the recommendations, please, Leader and Cabinet, you will note the recommendation 1 is to note the contents of the report, and recommendation 2 is to delegate authority to myself as a corporate director to send the finalised version of this active travel network plan through to Welsh Government for approval. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks so much, Janine. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, and I'm very glad, Janine, that you've highlighted the complexity of delivering these active travel schemes. I think it's something that's important that is conveyed to all members. In essence, a lot of the low-hanging fruit and active travel routes has already been put in, and we know how difficult those have been where land ownership is in our favour. To continually progress towards improving active travel as Welsh Government wants to, and with that level of funding, the 70 million actually shows their intent to do active travel as opposed to other vehicle travel. Then we're going to have to take into consideration other more complex schemes where land ownership is going to be in contention. So I want to thank the team because they are totally professional. They're in the process of delivering the scheme along Cowbridge Road in Bridgend Town Centre, which was a challenge in itself when it was on a highway. But if they can do that, I'm very confident that they can go on and deliver other ones for us. And Leader, I'd like to move this report.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Smith, please.
I'd certainly like to second the report. Again, thank the officers for all the work that's gone into this. I think the vision is a completely alternative transport system linking up the whole county. It's a huge ambition. I think we are restrained by the financial modelling, the way that this is financed. It's financed in a piece by piece way, and the way that it's financed means that it's inevitable that we have missing links which need to be filled, and that's what we've got at the moment. At the moment, I couldn't put my hand on my heart and say it's completely safe to ride my e-bike uphill from Bridgend to my Stag, or downhill from Cefn to Porthcawl, without thinking very carefully about the route that I'm going to take. And it'll be a roundabout route, it won't be direct. So if we realistically want people to use the bike or to walk, in preference to starting up a big internal combustion engine and going, say, 1.5 miles to the shops, or going out for the evening, or commuting. We've got a lot of work to do yet, but we have got the vision, and we have got the shadow network, if you like, or the skeleton network, and what we need to do is to flesh that out.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And is there any other members that want to come in? And of course, this is our plan, if you like, but it is dependent, well, entirely dependent on Welsh Government Active Travel Fund or Section 106 payments. And as the Corporate Director has outlined, to be fair to Welsh Government, they have put their money where their mouth is, and they have doubled the amount of funding, more than double the amount of funding. But Councillor Smith makes a fair point around sometimes the timescales for funding these routes are very compressed, shall we say, and it is very difficult to progress some of these projects within such a short timescale, particularly when it requires, in some places, land acquisition, etc. And we'll continue to make the case for multi-year funding that would give us more flexibility to deliver some of those more complicated routes. So thanks to Janine and of course the team, in particular Joseph Casanelli and colleagues. For a mover and a seconder, is everyone in agreement with the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Thank you, Janine. So we'll now receive your third report on enforcement policy for the issuing of fixed penalty notices for environmental offences changes. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm not going to repeat the title of that report. That's quite a long title, isn't it? Today. But Leader, may I welcome Jen Sparrow into Cabinet. It's the first time into Cabinet today. Jen is the new manager of this service. So we're thrilled to have Jen with us. She was promoted into the post a couple of months ago. So Jen has been instrumental in putting the report together and is here to answer any questions should we have them. So the purpose of this report then, Leader, is to seek approval of proposed amendments to the Council's enforcement policy for using fixed penalty notices. Now, back in November 2019, Cabinet approved the enforcement policy for using these penalty notices. And at the time, Welsh Government stated we could use them for low-level environmental crimes such as littering, dog fouling, fly tipping, and other waste issues. They were proportionate and they were more effective than prosecution in court, we found. Now, enforcement procedures do differ between local authorities. In Bridgend, I think we've been very effective in educating residents and warning offenders prior to us implementing fixed penalty notice, and it has been positively received. But if we look at the current situation, and that's set out in section 4 of this report, we need to now amend our enforcement policy to include offences from a number of additional pieces of legislation. The Clean Neighbourhood and Environmental Act, we've got the Environmental Protection Act and the Refuse and Disposal Amenity Act. And Appendix A of this report today, Leader, has the amended enforcement policy within it. So what I'd like to do is just very quickly take you through what the amendments are. So under the Environmental Protection Act 1990, it was agreed that for a waste offence, such as fly tipping, we could offer a fixed penalty notice of £200, but £120 if you paid earlier. Now, surrounding local authorities have a fixed penalty notice of £400 for fly tipping and £200 if you pay early. Okay, so whilst ours are 200, theirs are 400. Now, under the Act, we can have anything from £150 to £400, so we can go to that limit. Now, what is very clear, Leader, is we want to defer any offenders from distinguishing between borough boundaries when they were committing offences. And it's recommended for that reason that this council incorporate the same level of penalty as our neighbouring local authorities. And we move to a position where we have a fixed penalty notice of £400 for fly tipping and waste issues. Now, the other thing that this amended policy does, Leader, is it raises our ability to issue fixed penalty notices for a number of other areas. The first thing as well to draw your attention to is we can now FPN for waste issues from businesses that are not complying with their waste responsibilities. So if we feel, for instance, a takeaway, there were some difficulties with packaging all around the area, the street, we probably could look at what we could do to implement some enforcement there. The second thing is vehicles. They have now been incorporated into our policy. So, for instance, you can have a fixed penalty notice for an abandoned vehicle or where vehicles are parked on the road to be sold and they're causing a nuisance to residents in the area. But this is mainly aimed at people who are traders who are selling more than 2 vehicles from their property on the road and causing a nuisance. So really, could I please draw your attention then to the recommendations, Leader, and whether you and Cabinet are happy to approve our revised enforcement policy and those amendments I've just outlined so that we can take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janina. I'll bring the Deputy Leader in, but before I do that, I wanted to welcome Jen to her first meeting of Cabinet. Delighted that you join us, and congratulations very much on your appointment. I know you've You've got off to a really good, flying start in your new role, and I'm sure you're relishing the challenge and excited by the opportunities that you have in the new role. Deputy Leader, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to move the report and the recommendation. Whilst this report broadly just brings the authority in line with current legislation, I think it is an important report because although education is our first sort of line of defence and trying to get people to comply and don't be a nuisance to their neighbours, unfortunately, on rare occasions, we have to have these tools that we can use to enable our neighbourhoods and just to function normally. It is very sad that occasionally we have to do this, but it's very important that we have this option open to us. So happy to move the report, and thanks, Jen, for bringing this to Cabinet this afternoon.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Baldwin is next, and then Councillor Smith. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader, and welcome also, Jen, although being the Cabinet member and the councillor for the area that I cover, we've met many times, so you can imagine what I'm going to raise today. Happy to second the report and all the recommendations that are in there. I think what's important for our residents now is to see that the authority is using the tools that it has to impact on persistent offenders. And I'm going to mention the Wild Mill area. And I know that the mispresentation of waste isn't fly tipping as much as some people think that it is. But it's important that we start using these fixed penalty notices now and other innovative technologies and approaches to be able to tackle potential issues in areas where we've got some communal collections, but very looking forward to not just the issuing of fixed penalty notices, but also the collection of the money that comes with them. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. And of course, any revenue that is raised from such fines, it has to be invested back into the service, doesn't it? And whether that's education or signage, etc. Councillor Smith is next, please.
Yes, as one of our representatives to County Archives, I would just like to take this opportunity to second the proposal so that 100 years from now I can amuse archivists when they read the minute where Councillor Smith said, thank you, Mrs. Nightingale, and welcome, Miss Sparrow.
Very good.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Councillor Smith. I can't see that anyone else wants to come in. I don't know what anyone else can say now after that. Do we have support for those recommendations that have been moved and seconded? Yes. Does anyone want to just indicate their support for those for that recommendation, please?
I have moved it and I support it, obviously.
Yeah, you moved it. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much, Jen, and we look forward to working with you. And the last report from the Corporate Director Communities on today's agenda is a report on privately owned advertising on bus shelters. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Hopefully a very simple one, this item 8. It's to seek Cabinet approval to enter into a deed of variation to vary the terms of an existing agreement that we have in place in relation to the erection of bus shelters and the grant of advertising rights on those shelters. So if I take you to the background of the report, Leader, back in 1997, Bridgend entered into a bus shelter agreement with the Moore Group, who the year later become Clear Channel. And Clear Channel have a 15-year agreement with us, which could be extended successively for periods of 5 years. And what they do, Leader, they, as you're aware, they provide 25 bus shelters around the borough, which they clean, they maintain, and they provide their advertising. So it's free to us, and we get that facility. They've come to us recently, they've approached us to request a variation to the terms of their agreement to meet their advertising requirements. So in essence, Leader, they want to go digital now with their advertising in their bus stops. So instead of the static posters, they want to have the roll-in period of advertising, as is the new way. And they're also asking, please, can they extend their agreement for another 5 years? Because if they do want to replace facilities, they want to have 5 years of, dare I say, advertising income from it. So what we need to do is enter into a deed of variation with them to put this in place. So if I take you to the recommendations, please, Leader, it's to approve entering into this deed of variation on the bus shelter agreement with ourselves and Clear Channel, and to delegate authority to myself to negotiate terms and execute this in liaison with the Chief Officers for Legal and the Chief Officer for Finance. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Janine, Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader, and happy to move this report. But just a simple question in relation to the advertising and the renewals of bus shelters. I would imagine that some of the bus shelters are quite old, even though they would have had a period of renewal. There's going to need to be new bus shelters that would need to be put in to accommodate the digitalisation. So I was just wondering, I'm not expecting you to have this answer right now, but it is something to come back to us on, what their schedule and programme is for replacing old stock for the new digital bus shelters, if possible.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baldwin. That is something we've asked them for. I know it is their intention to look at replacing some shelters, older style shelters, to bring the digital piece together. And I think what will be important is to understand what, when, the time scaling, so that we can put some communications out for the public to understand. Yeah, but I will come back to you with that.
Okay, thank you, Janine. And then Councillor Gebby wants to come in. Councillor Gebby, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. It's a very, very quick question. I'm sure Janine can take away and give us a further response, but I would like the carbon neutral footprint. If we're going to enable all the digitalisation, I would like to ensure that any service provision going forward or anything that we're building in the county borough is carbon neutral. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Councillor Gebby. We are looking at that and whether we can use some photovoltaic cells on these shelters to try and power the messaging and the advertising. That's something we will be looking at as part of our net zero carbon aims. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gebby. Are you happy to second the recommendations, Councillor Gebby?
I am indeed, yes, thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gebby. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please, colleagues?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Janine. You can you can rest your voice. A well deserved break. No, thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Lead. Bye.
Thank you. So the next report we'll receive is a report of the Corporate Director for Social Services and Wellbeing, and it is our annual report on social services representations and complaints for 2020-2021. Claire, please.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I'm very pleased this afternoon to present this report, this annual report for the last financial year into social services, complaints and representations. As Cabinet members will know, and as set out in the report, there are very specific statutory regulations in respect of complaints brought forward under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. And the report details the standards for response to stage 1 complaints, which are responded to with the aim of resolution at the service area, and stage 2 complaints, which are the subject of an independent investigation undertaken by a suitably qualified investigating officer who's independent of the council. The report also provides details of complaints brought forward under the Council's corporate complaints procedure in respect of social services, member referrals, access to advocacy and other engagement with people who receive care and support services. My overall assessment as Corporate Director is that the report is really very positive read in respect of the performance of social services and wellbeing and Bridgend as reflected through the resolution of complaints at the earliest stages, the comments and compliments received during that last financial year. And I think it's especially important to reflect that that whole of that financial year was a year that was blighted by COVID, and that had significant impact on the lives of people with care and support needs throughout the county borough. And at times throughout that last year, there were considerable restrictions in place in terms of the way that we delivered care and support services. And it could have been reasonable to anticipate an upsurge in complaints when some services weren't up and running. But the complement showed that alternative ways of working, such as the telephone contact that we put in place at the time, were very well received, and that social care services really were a lifeline for families when other aspects of community support weren't available. It's particularly pleasing to note that there's been a significant reduction in the number of complaints received, and that compliments and comments outnumber the complaints, really demonstrating the impact on people's lives of critical services. And remembering that we don't ask people to give us compliments, they do that of their own volition, because they feel moved to do so by the services that they've experienced. The practice in complaints management, as I said, is to resolve at the earliest possible stage, and 80% of complaints are being resolved at stage 1, which is excellent to see, and that really is a tribute to the team managers and people within services who take the time to really understand what's happening and to put in place sets of measures to ensure that people are happy not to progress to the next stage of the complaint process. It's also pleasing in the report to see that advocacy and access to advocacy is set out. This really is an important area of what we do, making sure that people with care and support needs have access to an independent person who can express their views and opinions if there are reasons why they need that support, either statutorily or as good practice. You can see that in relation to issue-based advocacy, there continues to be good performance, and that some improvement, and this is the value of data, is evidenced in respect of the active offer to every individual of advocacy. I think this report is really brought alive by reflection on some of the engagement and involvement opportunities for individuals, and by some of the comments within the report, and just to reflect a small number of those. In respect of home care, there's a comment there that without the ongoing support and commitment throughout COVID-19, we as a family would have found it difficult alone. And the team caring for my mum have exceptional talents. In respect of compliments for children's social care, which as members will know is an area of council business where people don't always welcome us into their lives, there are some really lovely compliments as well. And just to pick out a couple, thank you so much for being an amazing social worker, and what we would want for any council service. Whoever I spoke to was amazing when somebody phoned into our children with disability teams. Every complaint is an opportunity to learn and improve, and lessons from complaints are an important part of our quality and performance arrangement, and critically inform the training and development programme for our workforce. Whilst each complaint is unique and often issues need to be resolved at an individual level, there are always areas where we can improve, and communication is frequently a theme and underpins lots of the wider issues, and how we explain our decisions in a way which isn't jargonistic and is meaningful to the individual. Table 6 reflects some of the systemic learning in 2021 from complaints, and while there are 4 areas detailed there, underpinning all of those 4 areas is the effectiveness of systems and processes and modes of communication. I'd like to finalise my remarks around the report by paying tribute to the very small complaints team. It's 2 people who work in social services, and also the support of colleagues who work for Kelly in corporate complaints department, who work very, very closely with us. The team are always accessible to complainants and to colleagues across the directorate, and support action planning and lessons learned, as well as the effective management of the complaints process. The objectives for the team in this financial year are detailed under section 10 of the report, and I draw members' attention to the recommendations in 9.1 of the cover report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Claire. I'm going to bring Councillor Gebby in, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you very much, Claire, and the whole team. I think it's really important that we note the exceptional work demands that they've been working under during the past year, and the fact that we haven't got more complaints, I think, is really telling in itself. I think it's been proven to be really difficult to deliver some of our services. And whilst we may have put alternative processes in place, we've still managed to protect those most vulnerable and made sure that they're supported in our communities, whatever their worries and concerns are, irrespective of COVID. So I'm delighted with the report and I'm quite happy to move it. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gabby. I completely endorse those comments. Councillor Patel, please.
Thanks, Leader, and I'd like to agree with Councillor Gabby. I think the report overall is really overall is really pleasing to read. I just wondered if Claire, you could provide some reassurance about what happens when somebody complains and how that impacts the service and what we as a result do differently, I guess.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Patel. I think there's probably two aspects to that. One is how we support the individual who's complained, and the other is how we ensure as a service that we see complaints as a positive opportunity to resolve issues. And both can present a little challenge, can't they? So increasingly as a service, and I think you can see by the number of complaints that are resolved at the earliest opportunity, we seek to meet with complainants. We seek to really understand the issues that are causing them concern, to articulate those in a way, and if at all possible, to address those issues, so that both the complainant in bringing forward their issues feels comfortable and feels that they are having a positive experience of working with us as a service in having those matters resolved, and also that the workforce feels supported in terms of being able to address those issues. In areas where you tend to have higher complaints, it's because people don't feel comfortable to address the issues at the earliest possible opportunity, when people perhaps are not confident in terms of dealing with issues head on, when things are perhaps starting to not go well for the individual. And what we aim to do is to train and support our staff to have confidence in those conversations, to have confidence to put things right, to empower people working in the front line to be able to do that without over bureaucratic processes above them. And I think that the sort of the fruit of that is really within the report in terms of that 80% being resolved at that earliest possible stage. Obviously, people who feel that those issues aren't resolved at the earliest possible stage are supported very well by that small complaints team to set out the areas for resolution in a stage 2 complaint, and then that is the subject of an independent investigation which they are supported through. And I think if something gets to that stage, it's really important that again everybody is supported through that process, because the aim at that point is to ensure that things don't progress to ombudsman unless they need to, and obviously that people continue to get the support they need whilst those processes are progressing.
Thank you, Claire, and you are of course right to point out that we've seen those complaints being resolved at an early stage, and that's exactly the approach that we've taken for a long time now, because we want to try and address any issues that people have as quickly as possible, because a long drawn out formal complaint takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and it rarely leads to satisfaction, if only because it becomes bureaucratic and it becomes longer. It takes longer to deal with an issue. But what we would say is that we want people to engage in the process, that if they want to take a formal complaint, that's absolutely their right, and they've got a right to do so. And if people have got concerns, we want them to raise them at the earliest opportunity, so that if there is an issue, we can address that issue. But I am pleased also, very pleased to read some of the compliments, and many moving compliments there. But I think one in table 7, which is very moving, is from a person who says, "We will always be eternally grateful for the assistance you personally provided in ensuring my mother's wish to die in her own home was respected. You guided us carefully, tactfully, with kind and compassionate support throughout the care process provided by Bridgend County Borough Council Adult Social Care. And that is a reminder that we are there at the most important times in people's lives, and we are making a real difference to people across the county borough on a daily basis. The report has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you, Claire. The next report we'll be receiving is on the Gambling Act 2005 and the statement of licensing principles. No, it won't. I'm rushing ahead. I'm trying to end this meeting far sooner than it is going to end. The next report is on the additional one-off payment to Bridgend foster carers and adult placement carers, and the proposal to make such a payment. And I can see that Stephen Howell's group manager for provider. I've forgotten your title now, Stephen, but I nearly got it right, didn't I?
It's a long one. It's placements and provider services.
I knew there were placement and provider services in there. I couldn't remember the order. So welcome to Steve. Over to you, please, Claire.
Thank you, Leader, and I'll pass over to Steve to present the report.
Obviously, bear in mind, Leader, you're anxious to finish the meeting as timely as you can, so I'll keep my input brief, I suppose. But in terms of the report that's been brought here today, just, I suppose, if I reflect back on sort of in 2020, the whole of the country went into lockdown. Everybody's life at that stage was pretty much turned upside down. For our foster carers and our sort of adult placement families who were caring for vulnerable adults and vulnerable children, there were a number of significant added complexities. From a fostering perspective, carers were asked to step in and facilitate contact between children and birth families in a way they hadn't been asked predominantly to do before, but also hadn't been trained for, hadn't been prepared for, but nonetheless pitched in as best they could to support that much needed contact between the children and their families. And on top of that, some of those children who have additional complexity in terms of their behaviours linked to some of the early years traumas they'd had. So continuing to manage some of those sort of sorry, I got lost, cut off briefly then. So carers sort of charged with managing some of those complex, challenging behaviours with children who were at home full time at this stage because of obviously with the schools being closed and children not attending school. And again, for adults with learning disabilities, with their lives being turned upside down, and their regular day-to-day lives had changed so significantly. During that time, workers in social care, it was recognised the additional challenges of the work that we were doing, and the government obviously kindly agreed to 2 payments to made to social care staff. However, there was no blanket approach taken, I suppose, in terms of recognising the work and the caring that had been offered by foster carers during this time and by those adult family placement families. And I mean, I think it's described in the report, quite a piecemeal approach taken by across local authorities in terms of how we responded to that. And it was very much sort of left down to local authorities, and we've seen certainly from an adult placement perspective a neighbouring authority giving a payment to their families during that time. What we do know in terms of the current situation is those carers are still being resilient, caring for children and vulnerable adults, providing them with the best care possible in often difficult circumstances, continue to support ongoing contact with families, wherever they needed. But we also know there's a shortage of carers across Wales, and that's clearly replicated, whether that's children's social care or adult social care. And I think what's been proposed in this report is to recognise really the additional challenges carers have faced during the pandemic, and it goes some way to hopefully offering our sort of acknowledgement of the role they played during that time, but also to acknowledge some of the additional costs they would have faced during that time as well, with children being at home full time, and just to replicate, I suppose, a little bit the offer that's been made to social care staff, which is to agree a one-off payment to our foster carers and adult supported lodgings providers and our adult placement families, a one-off payment of £500 to, as I say, to recognise and acknowledge everything they've done for the people they care for since lockdown, since the beginning of the pandemic, back in sort of March, April 2020. So I think that's certainly the request we have for today is to seek agreement and approval for that payment to be made. And hopefully, if agreements, I don't want to put any pressure, but if that payment is agreed, we certainly anticipating that this payment will be with carers before Christmas.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. No pressure at all. So Councillor Gabby, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you, Steve. Firstly, I'd like to move and support the recommendations in the report for obvious reasons, but actually the Leader and I were at the foster care Christmas party last week, and I would like to tell all members and the corporate, our board here, about how delightful some of those children were. And it was really, really nice to see the Leader playing balloon, for instance, with one little girl. That was lovely. And there was another little girl who did not want to be put down. So it was really nice. And some of the foster carers that we spoke to, and we discussed various, they were so enthusiastic, and the care and the attention that they gave to our youngsters is phenomenal. So I commend them. So my hat goes off to them, and thank you very much for their endeavours, because without them we would have been in a dire need with some of our most vulnerable in the community throughout the pandemic. And I do support the payment that we can make without any tax, because I think that's really important that we take notice of that. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thanks so much, Councillor Gabby, and I should advise colleagues that this was a Christmas party this Christmas, not last Christmas, and lateral flow tests were taken by all the participants, and there were all the proper procedures and risk assessments in place, and it was a party for the children, and they enjoyed it very, very much. So we've had Councillor Gabby move the recommendations. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Baldwin, please.
Yeah, happy to second that, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Patel, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, it was mainly to second the report, but also to say that I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Councillor Gabby has said, and I'd like to thank the foster carers for everything that they do. It is a difficult role, and yeah, just wanted to let them know that they are appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. They're not caring for these children because of the money, but we have to, it's important we show our appreciation, and foster carers are no different to any other members of our community. They would have seen their fuel bills, for example, rising rapidly in recent months, and the cost of living rising, and we have a responsibility to show our appreciation, and I know they will appreciate it, won't they, Steve? Because obviously this is a public report, so they will know that there's this proposal that's been made to today, and of course it's a daily campaign, isn't it, to recruit more foster carers, but it's also about retaining the foster carers we've already got. And this is about showing that appreciation, because they are discharging a fundamental role for us as corporate parents. Thankfully, we haven't got to discharge that role personally. We hand that very precious role to foster carers, and to that responsibility to some of our adults that we care for as well. We have foster carers to deliver that on our behalf, and this is showing our appreciation to them, and I'm sure they will appreciate it, Steve. And I can't see anyone else wants to come in, so thank you very much. And I know you'll be conveying that message to the carers as soon as possible, and we can get that payment in hopefully before Christmas.
I certainly will, and thanks very much, and I will pass on Cabinet's thanks as well for the care and that they provide to the children that they look after.
Please do it. It is so important. Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you to you and the team as well for the work that you've done to provide support to the carers. Caring for the carers is also very important. Thank you. And the next report this time is the Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Licensing Principles, and it's a report of the head of the shared regulatory services, Dave Hollands. Over to you, please, Dave.
Afternoon, Leader. I don't get invited to many parties, as you can imagine.
Cool.
So I'm here to just take you through the statement of licensing principles we've set out for the Gambling Act. It's something we do every 3 years. I must stress it is a council function, and it begins its journey in the summer of 2021, when the licensing committee under Councillor David Lewis asked us to go out to consultation on the new policy. The report contains the consultation responses we've had back, and on the 9th of November the Licensing Act Committee, the 2003 Licensing Act Committee, agreed the wording of the new policy and agreed that it should go forward to council now for use in the council area for the next 3 years. It's here today to flag with you as and gain your endorsement. But the point I would make is that while the Cabinet has no role in the formulation of the policy, obviously the policy has big impacts on our other corporate agendas around well-being and mental health and the like. The Chief Medical Officer recognises the impact gambling can have on local communities. I mean, I would flag that the council's policy controls only things like betting shops and fruit machines in pubs, and the very physical end of gambling, and the growth in online gambling is the role of the Gambling Commission. So we have regular conversations with them as the local authority. We have conversations with the Welsh Government, but the Gambling Commission set their own policies based on the licensing principles. So Leader, this is an information report, I guess. Really, it's tomorrow that the full council gets to have a look at it and hopefully agrees that it's a robust policy to take us forward. What we haven't been able to do that we wanted to do is a more in-depth assessment of what was happening last year. And of course, many of the shops were shut. Many of the pubs were shut through that period. So it's something I've discussed with Yvonne, and we will have a look at it in 2022. And if need be, come back to council at an earlier date if we find something that in the policy that is deficient in some way. So as I say, the purpose of the report is to ask you to endorse its publication and take it to council tomorrow.
Thank you for that, Dave. Councillor Patel, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Dave. I'm happy to move that this goes forward to council tomorrow, probably for a fuller discussion on gambling, probably. So yeah, I don't claim to know what councillors will ask, but I'm pretty sure that they will want a fuller discussion on gambling and what we can do as a service to prevent it, and probably some feedback on some of the work we have done previously in terms of writing to Westminster and asking them to review it, and you know, the kind of what we cover here as a service is you know, physical kind of gambling opportunities, I guess, whereas a lot are now, with the pandemic, you know, the betting shops were closed, but I don't think all bets were off. I think that people were just going online and doing their thing, and you know, bingo halls may be closed, but I think that if we have a look at the data there, they'll show that actually more people signed up online, and I think that's probably something that members may want to discuss tomorrow. But I'm pleased with the policy as it is, and also the fact that some of the opportunities for people to participate, the premises, have reduced, and I think that's something that we haven't done, but it is probably one of the positive effects of COVID, where businesses have started to look at, you know, what they're doing and whether or not they want to continue to operate. So yeah, I think, for me personally, I think the fact that the number of premises has declined is a good thing. Obviously, it's driven the people to probably do online betting, but yeah. So just, I think it's a mixed report, and I look forward to the discussion tomorrow. But I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Patel. You outlined very well then the continued trend that we've seen accelerated during the pandemic of a shift to gambling online, and we'll have to be clear tomorrow that whilst we'll all be concerned about that as members, we simply do not have the powers for that rest with the Gambling Commission, and indeed I think it's fair to say that whilst in-person gambling is heavily regulated, I would certainly contend that currently online gambling is not as well regulated as potentially it could be, and you know, one of the unintended consequences of that may simply be that if we don't address that, is we simply shift gambling from a more regulated environment to a less regulated environment, and that could unfortunately result in more risky gambling, because we recognise, don't we, Dave, that there are lots of people that enjoy a flutter, if I can use that term, and they can gamble without becoming addicted to gambling, and that is good. That is a positive experience for them. People can enjoy it, and it supports jobs. The concern is when that gambling becomes addictive, and as you've described, the Chief Medical Officer now recognises it as a public health concern, because sadly, in the most extreme cases, we have seen it lead into loss of life, where it dominates people's lives when they become so addicted to gambling. So we look forward to that discussion tomorrow, and we've had that mover of the recommendations by
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. That's what I was looking for. And is everyone in agreement with that? And we'll discuss it further tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you,
Great.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah.
And can you just confirm, Dave, you will be joining us tomorrow?
I would say there's 130 chance, Leader. Yes. Yes, I will be there. I will be there.
You won't be at any Christmas parties, that's for sure. No. Okay. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Because and just for the record, I think this is your last.
We keep saying this.
I know, so I'm not. That's why I'm not going to repeat it. Not that I don't like seeing you, but
Don't say it. Don't say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. I can say it tomorrow, so I'll say it tomorrow, Dave. It's good to see you. And we'll see you again. Tomorrow. And thank you again for the work on this and the report, and of course the work that everyone has been undertaking and is still going on. And unfortunately, the teams may be a lot busier than we hoped they would be now over the Christmas period and the period going forward. And I don't underestimate for a second how difficult it has been at times for those teams, particularly as the regulations change in terms of COVID-19 and the regulations and legislations are changing on a very frequent basis. Thank you, Dave. That was the last public report. We don't have any urgent items that we've been asked to consider. So there's now a proposal that we exclude the public from the meeting in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Order 2007. And I'll ask Kelly to take us through the test that we need to apply before we exclude the public from this meeting. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Leader. As you've said, there is a presumption of open government and that decisions are made in the public arena. However, there are statutory exemptions to that presumption, and the minutes and reports that follow on the agenda fall within the exemptions as they contain financial information which is confidential to third parties. Cabinet can therefore apply the public interest test to determine whether to hear the next items in closed session and exclude the public from the meeting. The test you need to apply is whether the presumption of open government is outweighed by the need to keep this information confidential at this point in time. Obviously, as matters progress and that information can be made public, it will then be put into the public domain when appropriate. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Kelly. As a monitoring officer, and I'm certainly content that when applying that test, that the public should be excluded, as item 16 contains commercially sensitive information, as does item 17. Do I have a support for that, colleagues?
I'm happy to support that on the grounds of confidentiality and commercial aspects.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. So we'll now exclude the public. I'll just check with Andrew that the hordes of